Hello, my name is Hannah. I am the published author of 2 books at 17. I am here from Vaguely Interested to 1, welcome you to my new channel, and 2, give you some awesome writing tips surrounding developing an idea for your first novel. Okay, so how this video is going to work, we're going to be structured in 3 different tips. I will hopefully be either commenting or linking in the description below the timestamps for each of these different tips, depending on if I can figure out how to use YouTube. We'll see. First tip is we're going to be developing our characters. Second tip, we are going to be picking 3 different plot points. And third tip, we're going to be defining the rules of our universe. So let's get to it. Tip number 1, developing your characters. Yay! Contrary to popular belief, your plot isn't the most important part of your story. Gasp, I know. How could I be speaking such blasphemy? But it is true, I'm telling you. If you have good characters that are relatable, that is what's going to make readers want to read your book. No reader wants to approach a book with just this terrible, unlikable character, and they don't want perfect Mary Sues either. You need to find a great in-between that's both likable and relatable and just this perfectly imperfect human that you're trying to serve forth on your reading platter. So, of course, I know you're wondering, how is it that we organize our thinking when we're trying to develop our characters? Simple. I'll show you. First, write down main character. Then, virtues. Under that, vices. Your virtues are going to tell readers why they should be rooting on your character. Your vices tell readers why that character is still a human and not some perfect godly being. So having both of those is super important in creating a realistic and well-rounded character that your readers are more likely to want to cheer on and to relate to or put themselves in the shoes of. Also, assuming that your book has a human or creature, physical being type of antagonist, you're also going to want to do the same thing for your antagonist. Crazy, I know. Antagonists are people too. Assuming that your antagonist isn't some internal battle that's happening. I'm operating under the circumstance that you have a physical person you're facing off with, but that's besides the point. So what your virtues do for your villain is it helps clarify their motivations and make them more easy to empathize with. And I know that's kind of dangerous when you're trying to get your readers to cheer on the main character, but it's also really important making sure that your villains are people too. An example of this is from my book, Roland's Oath. Lucius is a patriotic dragon. He is really proud and passionate for his nation, and it ends up making him conquer a bunch of nations around him to avenge his people. So his passion and his care for his nation are great things, and it ends up helping us clear up the motivations and develop an understanding of why he is the way he is. And it's really important to understand that because, you know, that's what good writing is about, is being able to understand perspectives outside of ourselves. Yay, you made it to tip 2. Congratulations. So at this point, I'm assuming that you have developed 2 of your characters, your antagonist and your hero. So what do we do now? Now we pick out 3 basic plot points: your beginning, your climax, and your ending. And I'm going to take you down on a walk along memory lane. So I'm sure you know this. I personally have had this diagram drilled into my head since 6th grade. I want to say 6th grade. We revisit it every year because it's important to understand the flow and the plotting and the pacing of a regular story. So here is our old friend, the plot diagram. Yay! No? Okay. Well, here it is anyway, whether you like it or not. So we're going to pick these 3 points. As I said, beginning, woo, right here, middle, right here, woo, and end. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down 1, the character. So starting off, you're probably going to be dealing with only your main character, or your main character and their friends, or however your story works. What you're going to do is you're going to set up your inciting incident, and what this is, an inciting incident pushes you into the action of your story. It makes clear what your plot's going to be about, and it just gets you going into the story. So you've got your main character, you've got your inciting incident, and you've got the story set up ready to go. Okay, getting a real life example from, oh, whoa, who wrote this? Looks like it's me. Rowland's Oath. We have, at our beginning, Arietta. So we write down the name Arietta. And then we have a little dash off to the side. We can tell that Arietta is weak from juvenile arthritis and needs to travel to another planet for healing. So this is really what sets up our journey. So you're going to write your main character, you're going to write who they are as a person, and then you're going to write what their purpose is on their journey that they're about to take. Then, under that, we have, again, your main character, maybe some friends that are participating in said adventure, and you're going to be writing down what is the big, like, explosive part of your book that you're going to be writing. For Rowland's Oath, going back to it, it is, again, Arietta and her little trio of friends, plus some adults, and the big explosive incident is a battle that takes place between our antagonists and our protagonists. And oftentimes, what our climax is going to be facing off with our villain. And it's really important that we have both our protagonists and antagonists present for the climax, because that's one of the most important parts. And then finally, moving on, we have our falling action, or what does a return to normal look like? And it is in this stage that we consider how far that our characters have come throughout their journey, and some things, just writing down some things that symbolize that journey and what has changed about your characters. Since we have those 3 basic plot points, now we can get a feel for the pacing of our story. So you don't necessarily need what gets you from point A to point B, or from point B to point C, but when we have these 3 basic points, we can kind of figure it out along the way. And your writing may be a little bit more rushed if you have those points in mind, but at the same time, it keeps your sense of direction very clear, and it helps make sure every single word you write down is purposeful towards reaching that next goal. Okay, taking it over to my writing wall, I'm gonna give you guys like a real life example of something that I do for plotting. This story is a little old, and it's one of the ones that I never ended up publishing, but it's something that has helped me develop my craft and really become a better writer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and show what that looks like to you guys. So here on my wall, we have the development of our characters. This, honestly, I have a notebook that has their virtues and vices, but this also keeps track their physical features as well. This shows who's related and who isn't. This is like an important aspect of the story. Again, here's a drawing of, I know it's not very great, I'm not an artist. Here are some things that I had to keep in mind while writing. And then finally, for our pacing or the plot section of this video, here's the example that I have for you. We've got our beginning, our middle right here, some tips, and then we've got our ending. So that was my writing wall. Honestly, it felt really motivational being able to look up and see that that's what I was doing and that I knew where I was going. It kind of fought off that feeling of hopelessness you get sometimes when you sit down. And just see that the cursor is blinking and it gets really stressful. But looking at that wall and knowing that I had a plan in mind really both made me more confident writing, and it kept my thinking organized. Here's my final tip with some better writing. Sorry about that. I just never thought about turning on the overhead lights. And by overhead, not those, these. Anyways, so my final tip for you is to define your world. I've been using the word define a lot. Just roll with it. But defining your world includes defining customs, cultures, rules, systems in place, and this is important both for fantasy and for normal writing. So for fantasy, obviously, world building is going to be more important, but at the same time, the life and culture of a bustling city versus like a small rural town are going to be completely different, and you're going to want to make sure you both have information on what that should feel like and that you know certain rules that are in place. That way we know if a character breaks them, what that consequence would be, etc. For fantasy specifically, one thing that I find really cool is creating religions and defining and explaining, there we go, that's a different word, explaining how that impacts regular life, and it really gives a realistic feel to the world rather than it just feeling like another basic fantasy story. But it's also very important to know those rules and to understand how those rules impact us in the real world as well. So an example of this in the real world could be maybe there is a corrupt town that runs some sort of cult type deal and the government is impacted by that, so that would mean your characters have to be careful of how they interact with said cult and to make sure not to make them angry because they are influencing the town around them. So again, I don't know, that's an example off the top of my head, but it's always important being able to define the rules of your universe, that way you know how to efficiently break them. It just really provides good continuity, and in understanding that and understanding your surroundings, you're going to have much better writing in general. Okay, so you've developed your characters, you've picked the 3 plot points, and you've considered how your surroundings impact your characters. Now, guess what? It's time to implement those into your regular writing. I know it's really scary sometimes starting a new project, especially when you're first faced with that overwhelming blank screen, but you have all the tools in your tool set ready to tackle that challenge. And honestly, you just go right back to that first plot point, you understand what you want to get done, and you start writing. For those of you that stuck around to finish this whole video, thank you so much. I hope you liked the video. I hope you maybe consider dropping a like and maybe a little bit of a subscription action, perhaps. But anyway, I know you have the book of your dreams inside of you just waiting to come out, and I hope this channel can help you achieve that goal. If you find that goal elsewhere, I congratulate and commend you, because writing is hard, but know that I believe in you and know that I'm here for you. If you have any questions or ideas for a next video, drop those in the comments below. Have a great night. Happy writing!